Hi grade 9 students, this is Teacher Lester aka Zer Les, and I welcome you all to another fun and meaningful learning. Well, today, you will be joining me to explore more about the modern arts of the Philippines, and this topic is discussed in the third quarter or Unit 3 of your module. So without further ado, let's get this discussion started. Our lesson for today is entitled Arts of the Neoclassic and Romantic Periods. And for this topic, we will be discussing more about neoclassical paintings, neoclassical sculptures, and neoclassical architectures. Also, we will be dealing with romantic paintings, romantic sculptures, and romantic architectures. And to emphasize, we have neoclassicism and romanticism in the Philippines as well. For us to be guided with our goals in our discussion for this morning, let us consider the following learning competencies. The learner, or you, analyzes art elements and principles in the production of work following the style of neoclassicism and romanticism. Identifies distinct characteristics of arts during the neoclassic and romantic periods. Identifies representative artists from neoclassic and romantic periods. Uses artworks to derive the traditions or history of a neoclassic and romantic period. Compares the characteristics of artworks produced in neoclassic and romantic period. And makes an artwork that represents neoclassic and romantic characteristics. So to start with, let's have the definition of neoclassicism. Neoclassicism is from the year 1780 to 1840. The word neoclassic came from the Greek word neos, meaning new, and the Latin word classicus, which is similar in meaning to the English phrase first class. Neoclassicism is also defined as a neoclassical movement which coincided with the 18th century Age of Reason, or also known as the Age of Enlightenment. The art style in this period was brought about by the renewed interest for Greek and Roman classics. For this particular part of the lesson, we will be discussing more about neoclassical paintings, neoclassical sculptures, and neoclassical architectures. Before finally diving to the artworks and artists during this movement, the neoclassicism, let us first emphasize the different characteristics. First is rebirth and portrayal of Roman history. So heroes among the Romans are being recognized through this characteristic. Second, formal composition. So there is adaptation of the formality of the classicism. The use of diagonals to show the peak of an emotion or moment. So it means that aside from its formality, there is integration of emotion in this type of movement through diagonals. Because diagonals mean emotion or moment. Also, artists tend to use local colors. Local colors may mean the classics like black, white, gray, also brown, there's also red, and other common colors. And also, there is overall lighting. It means that in this period, lighting in arts is very significant. And lastly, classic geostructure. Now that we are already familiar with the characteristics of neoclassicism, let us now dive into the visual arts. First off, we have neoclassical painting. Neoclassical artists embrace the ideals of order and moderation in which artistic interpretations of classic Greek and Roman history were restored to realistic portrayals. Also, neoclassical painters gave great importance to the costumes, settings, and details of classical subject matter without adding distracting details but with as much historical accuracy as possible. Under neoclassical paintings, we will be discussing as well the painters or the prominent artists in this form of art. First is the neoclassical painters. Class, these are the neoclassical painters. First is Jacques Louis David, 1748 to 1825, from France. He was an influential French painter in the neoclassical style and considered to be the preeminent painter of the era. His subjects of paintings were more on history. These are his famous paintings. We have the Death of Marat from the left, and at the center, the Napoleon crossing the Alps, and on the right corner, we have Oath of the Horatii, and these are the paintings of Jacques Louis David. Next painter is Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres, 1780 to 1867, still from France. He was a pupil of Jacques Louis David. His paintings were usually nudes, portraits, and mythological themes. Examples of his famous paintings are Portrait of Napoleon on the Imperial Throne and also the Apotheosis of Homer. And those are the neoclassical painters. Moving on to the next visual art form of neoclassicism is neoclassical sculptures. Artists looked to Roman styles during the time of Alexander the Great for inspiration as well as to mimic their style. Let us give emphasis to these neoclassical sculptors. First one, Antonio Canova from 1757 to 1822, and he was from Italy. He was a prolific Italian artist and sculptor who became the most famous for his marble sculptures that delicately rendered nude flesh. And he opened the idea for portraying discrete sexual pleasures by using pure contours with his mythological compositions. Examples of his famous sculptures are Psyche Awakened by Cupid's Kiss and the Washington. Both are sculpted by Antonio Canova. Next famous sculptor was Bertel Thorvald Sen, 1789 to 1838, and he was from Denmark. He was the first internationally acclaimed Danish artist. He executed sculptures of mythological and religious themes, characters. And here's some of his famous sculptures. First one is Christ, and the second one is Lion of Lucerne. And the third visual art form to emphasize for neoclassicism is neoclassical architecture. This visual form started in the mid-18th century. In its purest form, neoclassical architecture was a style principally derived from the architecture of classical Greece and Rome, and the architectural designs of the Italian architect Andrea Palladio. These are the different types of neoclassical architecture. First is temple style, second is Palladian style, and the third is classical block style. Here are the examples of neoclassical architecture in temple style buildings. First is Pantheon in Paris, designed by Jacques-Germain Soufflot. British Museum London is the second, designed by Robert Smirk. And the third one is La Madeleine de Paris, designed by Pierre-Alexandre Vignon. The next style for neoclassical architecture is the Palladian style. These were based on Andrea Palladio's style of villa construction. Some of the buildings feature a balustrade, which is a railing with vertical supports along the edge of the roof. Examples of the most famous Palladian style buildings during the neoclassical era are White House and United States Capitol. Both are designed by Robert Adam. And the last style for neoclassical architecture is the classical block style. The building features a rectangular or square plan with a flat roof, and exterior features a repeated classical pattern or series of arcs and or columns. The overall impression of such a building was a huge, classically decorated rectangular block. Examples of these are Library of Saint Genevieve. We have there the picture of the interior and exterior, designed by Henry Labrosse. And we also have on the right side, Palais Garnier or Paris Opera House, designed by Charles Garnier. We can see the interior and exterior designs from the picture above. And that concludes the visual arts of neoclassical era, emphasizing neoclassical paintings, neoclassical sculptures, neoclassical architectures, and artworks. And now, let us proceed to Romanticism, which happened in the year 1800s and ended in the year 1810. Romanticism was a movement in which the artists of neoclassical period sought to break new ground in the expression of emotion, both subtle and stormy. It embraced a number of distinctive themes such as long for history, supernatural elements, social injustices, and nature, and there is an emphasis of landscape painting. Let us note that for this topic, we will be talking more about romantic paintings, romantic sculptures, romantic architectures, and their artists. As the neoclassicism, let us emphasize the characteristics of romanticism. First is height of action. Second is emotional extremes. Third is celebrated nature as out of control. Fourth is dramatic compositions. And fifth, heightened sensation, life and death moments. Now let us go straight to romantic painting, emphasizing portraits or figures. The paintings of the romantic period gave more emphasis on emotion. Artists expressed as much feeling and passion as it could be on canvas. First painter was Jean-Louis Theodore Géricault. He was born in the year 1791 and then died in the year 1824, and he was from France. He was the first French master and the leader of the French realistic school. His masterpieces were energetic, powerful, brilliant colored, and tightly composed. Here are some of his famous paintings. On your left, the Raft of the Medusa. At the center, Charging Chaucer. And in your right, Insane Woman. These are all obra maestra of Jean-Louis Theodore Géricault. Second painter is Eugène Delacroix. He was born in the year 1798 and died in the year 1863, and he was from France. He was considered the greatest French romantic painter of all. He achieved brilliant visual effects using small, adjacent strokes of contrasting colors. Here is his famous painting. It's only one, but it's really remarkable, and it's the Liberty Leading the People. We all know that Liberty was a heroine, and she was a woman leader who was very much worthy of respect because she's a woman, yet she is a symbol of strength because of her leadership. And of course, Liberty Leading the People is the work of Eugène Delacroix. And the third painter was Francisco Goya from 1746 to 1828, and he was from Spain. He was a commissioned romantic painter by the King of Spain, and he was also a printmaker regarded both as the last of the old masters and the first of the moderns. Wow! And here are some of his famous paintings. first is the 3rd of May. Second is Saturn devouring his son. And third is the burial of Sardine. Next, the romantic paintings are the romantic sculptures. And it says here that it is divided into works that concern about the human world and those that concern the natural world. First romantic prominent sculptor was Francois Rude. He's from France, and he was born in the year 1784 and died in the year 1855. He was best known for his social art, which aimed to inspire and capture the interest of a broad public. And he rejected the classical repose in favor of a dynamic, emotional, many monuments that steered the public for generations. And some of his famous sculptures are Departure of the Volunteers and Jeanne d'Arc. These are both works of Francois Rude. And next is Anton Louis Barye, 1796 to 1875, and he was also from France. He was the most famous animal sculptor of all time. He studied the anatomy of his subjects by sketching residents of the Paris Zoo. So as we can see, his sculptures are Hercules sitting on a bull, and also in the second work, we have Theseus slaying the Minotaur, and still a work of Anton Louis Barye. Now let us proceed to Romantic architecture, emphasizing the Gothic Revival style. Gothic Revival, also referred to as Victorian Gothic or Neo-Gothic, is an architectural movement that began in the late 1740s in England. Neo-Gothic buildings feature castellations in which the walls and towers are crenellated in imitation of medieval castles. Now let us study the Romantic architects. Now let us first know about Charles Barry. He was the artist behind Britain's foremost Gothic Revival monument, the Westminster Palace, aka the Houses of Parliament. So as we can see, the picture below, here is the Westminster Palace, and of course, designed by Charles Barry. And we also have James Renwick. Renwick's crowning American work was the St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. So the picture below is the facade of St. Patrick's Cathedral. And yes, just like Neoclassicism, we have just explored the characteristics, the paintings, the architectures and sculptures, and also the artists and artworks during the Romantic period. And now, let us pave way with the Neoclassicism and Romanticism in the Philippines. This won't take so long, so let us go straight with the famous artworks. First is the Christian virgins being exposed to the populace. This was a painting of Felix Resurrection Hidalgo y Padilla. And then on the right side, we also have Spoliarium. And this was actually painted by Juan Luna y Novicio, our own hero. This is the most popular, I guess, painting in the Philippines. And then here are the famous artworks in the field of sculpture. We have the very popular Oblation, or figure in front of UP. Yes, and this was designed or sculpted by Guillermo Estrella Tolentino. And we also have Siyam na Diwata ng Sining. This was sculpted by Napoleon Isabelo Veloso Abueva. And also emphasizing two of the many architectures influenced by Neoclassicism and Romanticism in the Philippines. Here are two famous artworks. First is the Bureau of Science and Insular Laboratory. As you can see in the picture, it's kind of old but still there, tall and strong. And we also have University of the Philippines, Manila on the right side. So class, that ends our discussion about our lesson. If you have some questions, don't be hesitant to message me, or you can consult Google to ask some questions, and of course Google will answer you accurately based from the reliable sources in the internet. And for your performance task, this is activity 3 of your last or learning activity sheet given by DepEd. And I entitled this myself, Apply Me. And these are the instructions. Paint, so it means that you're going to use paintbrush and paints, of course, or sketch. So you may use a clean sheet of bond paper or cartolina, whatever you want, and a pencil, and you are going to make an illustration showing the ideals and forms of neoclassical or romantic painting. So you can use your own subject in expressing your ideas. Observe the usage and application of the principles and elements of art. So I am giving you the freedom to make or to adapt your own subject, but you should apply or you should use the principles and elements of arts in the neoclassic and the romantic period of arts. Is that clear? I hope I am making myself clear. So you're going to send your output to your teacher through Google Classroom after. So that's all for today, class. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for interacting with the visual presentation as I present the lesson for today. And also, do not forget to subscribe on my channel and like this video and share it to your friends, and also ring the bell for you to be notified if there are new uploaded videos on my channel. So this has been Sir Les saying, let's dream and make it happen. So that's all for today, and I say see you all on my next video. Goodbye, grade 9. Thank you.